Welcome back everyone, I'm Arali, and today I want to talk about something that I've been teasing on my channel for quite a while. So I've been talking about this on my streams and stuff. The water orb. Because we were doing the personal story and they talk about the blue orb or the water orb that protects for Trinity from the influence of Zhaitan. And you know, when you look deeper into the whole situation of what it really could be, then it raises a lot of questions, but it also kind of maybe hints at something that could happen. So what we know about the water orb is that it was found by the Krait in the depths, right? And that's where they come from the unending ocean, but we don't know the true origin. We know it's some kind of artifact, right? But we don't know what it is. And we know it holds off Zhaitan's corruption. Now, this is interesting because it seems to be similar to how the Sylvari can't be corrupted, but that's because in a sense they're dragon minions, right? And dragon minions can't corrupt each other. This is something that we have kind of known for a while now. So is it too crazy to assume that maybe this orb could be of the deep sea dragon, maybe? That's why it kind of repels Zhaitan's corruption, because they're maybe in a way like opposites, kind of like how Jormag and Primordus are opposites to each other. Maybe the underwater dragon is somewhat like opposing Zhaitan's power. You know, Zhaitan has a little bit to do with water just because of where he was located and stuff, and then most of his risen were undead from the nation that he pulled out of the ocean. But yeah, I don't know if there's like some kind of connection with that. If it really is, it seems to be some kind of artifact. And if we go with the theory that it is of the deep sea dragon, then it seems to be infused with the deep sea dragon's power. So could it be something similar to, I did talk about in a recent video about the sanguinary blade or the dragon's blood spear, which both of those weapons were made from the blood of a respective elder dragon, but they were weapons. Maybe this is an artifact that's infused with the blood of the deep sea dragon, and that's why it has the power that it does, which that would be interesting. And then there was another theory that I kind of had that was maybe it's an egg. Now, that's a bit far-fetched because there's a lot of arguments against it too, because it doesn't look egg-shaped. The actual lore does say that it's perfectly spherical, and when we look at the one dragon egg that we have seen in Guild Wars 2, Orion's egg, that was egg-shaped, you know, and even the eggs in Guild Wars 1, Glint's original eggs from Guild Wars 1, those were also egg-shaped. So I don't know if that really is something to go on, also because Orion absorbed magic, right, as the egg, because they're trying to grow, and that's how the dragons, like, they consume magic, and that's how they grow in power. So this orb kind of seems to expel or distribute magic because it, like, prevents Zhaitan's corruption. So there seems to be some kind of power coming out of it. The whole orb situation seems really strange, and the reason why I, you know, kind of wanted to talk about this is, what if we can find more of them? Or what if there's some kind of other function? As far as we know, the water orb has been in Fort Trinity since we found it, since we put it there. You know, and then we had the Battle of Fort Trinity where the Risen tried to steal it, and it's been there since after that battle. And maybe it's gonna come back, maybe we're gonna get more lore on it, because I think, you know, we're looking at the deep ocean, right? And we're going to the point where this expansion it's called End of Dragons, which means we're getting to the end of the dragon storyline. And the one dragon that we haven't touched on is the underwater dragon. Now, with the underwater dragon, we don't know anything about it. When we faced Mordramoth, we didn't know anything about it. But we had a whole season and a whole expansion literally just fighting Mordram. It was just like all about fighting vines and the roots and things like that. And that was like a whole like season and a whole expansion. Now we're going right into End of Dragons, never even having faced any of the deep sea dragon's minions or know anything about it really. So I think there has to be in this coming expansion not too many people talk about it, but I think there's going to be a lot of content that has to do with underwater stuff. So going with that thought, what is something that we could maybe theorize on, or just maybe talk about, start a discussion on? I had a wish list before, but maybe add a couple of things to that. One thing was the Largos that I had. So the Largos, we know virtually nothing about. Again, so there's you know, not just the deep sea dragon, but also the Largos, which were introduced in Guild Wars 2, but they never really got this big backstory, or we don't know much about their society. We know they follow the Tetios Compact, which is led by the Tetios houses, and we know that they're like hunters, you know, they go for hunts, and we know that their respective figures in their society are called shadowed Scions, which is really weird because the only time we've heard the word Scion be used in any type of context in Guild Wars 2 was when it had to do with dragons. So I don't know if I'm stretching this too far, but does it have anything to do with the underwater dragon? I don't think so, but you never know. But they apparently lived in the unending ocean, but then also lived up north with the Quaggan. And the Quaggans said that they lived peacefully with the Largos because the Largos, they're hunters and they look for good prey, and they're looked down upon if they hunt weak prey, and Quaggan make a pretty weak prey because they're not vicious creatures and they don't like to fight and they're very peaceful. So they kind of in the north had a peaceful relationship with the Quaggan because of everything that I just mentioned. So it's really interesting. But then we also have in lore that apparently, from what we know, there's some unknown horrors that are said to be in their homelands. And anytime they talk about the unending ocean and those horrors that are in the depths, is always talked about that it's the deep sea dragon minions that are pushing all these races back to the top. That's why we're seeing Largos, because they're being pushed to the surface by these horrors. So if we're talking about the deep sea dragon, again, we're gonna need to get more lore on the Largos and their society, and you know, how they live. Like, we don't even know their structures, like how, you know, where do they sleep, what do their structures look like, how's their technology. They seem to like wear these like underwater masks that they breathe through, and their naming is really interesting because they seem to have like Arabic names on some of them, and then some of them have like Egyptian based names, and they get different accents on the voice actors depending on what kind of name they have. So it's really interesting when you actually look at the Largos and everything we know about them, or what we don't know about them. And then there's also the interesting thing about the burned Largos that was found in Draconis Mons. We found at the very bottom, we found a burned Largos, and I don't know if they just put that in there as like an Easter egg or something, but it seemed to be kind of, I mean, this was season 3, and it seemed kind of to be a hint at like more stuff underwater. I don't know, it was just kind of, maybe they just put it there as an Easter egg, but it's just interesting to note. So yeah, so the Largos, that's interesting. And then going from Largos into what we talked about, Quaggan, for example, because what we know of the Quaggan is also there's not too much we know about them. We know that they originally lived, again, in the unending ocean. They were pushed out by actually the Krait. The Krait were pushed out by these horrors, seemingly the deep sea dragon minions, but they were pushed up by the Krait, and they follow Malagan, which there seems to be some kind of weird discrepancy. I'm not sure if it's a discrepancy or what, but they say that Malagan is this goddess or something that they follow, and that's kind of what they believe in. But then a lot of scholars, like human scholars and stuff, say that it's like Melandru that they're following, because anytime they worship Malagan, it's always like a statue of Melandru that kind of like drop to the ocean floor, but the Quaggans say it's not the same. So I'm thinking that maybe there's something deeper to that story, and maybe this might be some interesting thing about like more Melandru backstory, because the gods to me is like an interesting topic, because there seem to be more than just the gods that we have, right? We've seen Doom before, and he was defeated by Grenth, and then we have Menzies as like the half-brother of the god of war of Balthazar, and so it's just kind of, there seem to be more of these like whatever these beings are, you know, they're not gods in the sense of like they're omniscient or anything like that. So they're just very powerful immortal beings that can move through the mists. So it would be interesting to maybe see that Melandru had like a sister or something, which was Malagan, and they just kind of look similar. So the statues that the humans have erected looked like an underwater goddess that the Quaggans had or something, and maybe that's why they were sisters, because one was like a goddess of the land, and then there's a goddess of like underwater or something. I don't know, maybe that's, you know, it's just another crazy theory, but it would be interesting to maybe get some more of the backstory there, because going into the next point, we were talking about the Krait. So this is an interesting point because we're going to Cantha, right? And Cantha had the Naga, which were pretty much like the cousins of the Krait, but the crazy thing about that whole situation is that these are at this point kind of interchangeable, because the Krait used to be way different in Guild Wars 1. They used to be like shapeshifters, and there was some flying Krait too, but they seem to have now become how the Naga were in Guild Wars 1. So at this point, the two creatures seem to me, they seem very interchangeable, and I think that it would be smart on ArenaNet's part to kind of say, hey, Naga and Krait are pretty much the same thing, but they're just named differently because of the regions they live in or something. Because I think creating the Naga and maybe having them give them a backstory, but then not further explain the Krait backstory, is just kind of, they're too similar in a way to have them feel different. So I think that maybe combining these two would be maybe interesting, because we again want to talk about the deep sea dragon, but we're going to Kantha, so they kind of have to do something there with the Krait and Naga. So what we know about the Krait is that they were pushed out by the deep sea dragon. Everything's been being pushed out by these unknown horrors in the unending ocean, and it's surprising with the Krait especially because they're very vicious and they don't like to lose, and they fight, but they're getting pushed out by these horrors. So that seems kind of strange. It seems fine with the Quaggan and maybe even the Largos, because the Largos like to hunt, not even in pairs or in groups, but they like to hunt solo. So maybe fighting a group of monsters might have ended up, having them get pushed out. But with the Krait specifically, I mean, they band together and they're vicious and they're xenophobic and they hate everything, and they're, as far as we know, they're pretty powerful. So, and underwater is kind of their territory. So, but they're getting pushed up by these horrors, which means these horrors are really strong. So that's something that I find kind of interesting, because if we're gonna go fight these minions, I mean, if my theory that I had in my old video was wrong, then we're definitely gonna have to face off against these horrors, or probably against the deep sea dragon itself. And so it's kind of surprising that the Krait were pushed back. And there's this line about the obelisks that they have, right? We kind of know that they follow these obelisks that they have, but apparently they have kind of forgotten the original meaning of the obelisks. So maybe we can get something, a little bit of lore where it maybe talks about the obelisks, and maybe we find out the reason. Maybe there's some really old Krait that survived for a long time, and he lives by himself, and he's kind of just he's not xenophobic anymore. We kind of get this one Krait that doesn't like to fight, and he kind of just tells us a story maybe about the obelisks, and they're like, oh yeah, they actually used to be used as a shield against the deep sea dragon, and we use these obelisks as deterrent for the deep sea dragon, kind of how the orb, again the water orb, is used as a deterrent for Zaitan's corruption, but then something happened to the obelisks and they didn't know the rituals anymore or something. Maybe they forgot how to use them properly, or maybe the original power source was destroyed, so now the obelisks are just these weak little religious kind of statues at this point that don't really do anything. I don't know, that would be interesting. But we were talking about the Quaggans earlier too, and apparently the Krait killed the Quaggans used to follow a royal family, and the Krait killed this royal family, and apparently Malagan herself. So that's interesting, because now I was talking about earlier about the Malagan and Melandru thing. So Malagan used to be an actual being, I guess. I don't know if they're speaking metaphorically, they had this grand statue of Malagan, and the Krait came and killed the royal family and destroyed this grand statue where they thought the spirit of Malagan was inside the statue or something, or if it was an actual creature. Maybe it was an actual person, I'm thinking in my head a sister of Melandru, so she would be a mermaid maybe? How you would think of she's half human, half fish or something like that. Would be interesting to see maybe, I don't know, but there seems to be more to the Malagan story, I feel like. And I talk about all of this because we're going to End of Dragons, and even the logo has this underwater theme, and clearly it has something to do with the deep sea dragon, because this is something we're talking about the End of Dragons, and this is the one dragon we haven't seen, and we need to talk about the deep sea dragon. We need to that story needs to be resolved. So this whole expansion is pretty much just aimed at that, I'm guessing, because I feel like we're gonna get an end to the Jormag versus Primordus thing, and it's probably gonna be them killing each other, right? Or something like that is gonna be the conclusion there. But I think that all these underwater subjects that haven't been touched on in forever, I mean, we haven't heard anything new about Krait or Naga, Quaggans or Largos really since 2012, since the game was released. We've seen more Quaggans, and we've heard a little bit of tidbits here and there, but really overall the story and the depth of these creatures, of these underwater people, the societies and stuff, we haven't heard anything from them since Guild Wars 2 was released in 2012. So there's a lot of catching up pretty much that we would have to do. So I think because a lot of people concentrate on like, oh, we're gonna see the Kurzik and the Luxons, and we're gonna get to see Kaining City and Xingzhei, and that's all great and all. I'm all for that, but I think a lot of people miss the point of what about the underwater part of everything? If we're facing the deep sea dragon, there has to be a lot of underwater content, whether you like it or not. We have gotten recently the update of being able to mount our skimmers underwater, as well as, this is like a few years ago now, but we got the swim infusions, the swim speed infusions, and we got the rework of the underwater skills as well, actually. So all in all, there is definitely precedence to think that we're gonna go underwater and we're gonna see some of these societies. And I don't know, maybe you guys have some theories about what could be lurking down there, what we could see with these 3/4 different types of societies, and maybe how they all tie in with the deep sea dragon. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.